I never thought my own daughter would scream at me like a stranger. I never thought I'd hear, "Get out or I'll call the police," from the same lips that once kissed my forehead goodnight. The living room was still a mess from last night's argument, blankets strewn, a half-finished mug of tea I never got to drink, a toy truck lodged under the armchair. Rachel stood near the hallway, with her phone clenched in her hand like a weapon. Her eyes were wild, her voice sharp enough to cut through bone. "If you don't leave now, I will call the police, Mom. I'm serious." I didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. I slipped on my shoes quietly, my fingers trembling so badly I missed a loop in the laces. Her voice followed me to the door. "You're not well, and you're making everyone uncomfortable." The word everyone hit like a punch. The kids? Her boyfriend? The neighbors she thought were always watching? The air outside was damp and still. Mist clung to the hedges like a secret. As I stepped off the porch, the wooden planks creaked, like they knew this wasn't how it was supposed to end. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. But as I walked down that sidewalk, with my coat pulled tight and my bag dragging behind me, my mind reeled backwards. Rachel was 4 again, pouting in pink overalls because I made the peas touch the mashed potatoes. She was 7 and terrified of the dark, clinging to me at night like I was the only safe place left in the world. I used to braid her hair every morning before school, one hand steady while the other held her little chin up. I used to whisper, "You're safe, baby," even when the world felt like it was crumbling. When her father left. When I worked 2 jobs. When all we had was each other. I kept walking. Past the sycamore tree that shaded the front yard. Past the mailbox she once painted with glitter and crooked stars. My eyes burned, but I kept them forward. She didn't even come to the window. I hadn't lived on my own since I sold my condo 2 years ago, at Rachel's urging. "Come live with us, Mom," she'd said. "We'll help each other. You can help with the kids, and you won't be alone." And I believed her. God help me, I believed her. But the truth crept in slowly, subtly. It started with, "Could you watch the kids this afternoon?" Then, "We're a little tight on money. Maybe we could use your savings just until we catch up." Then, suddenly, it wasn't our money anymore. It wasn't our home. It was hers. And I was just inconvenient. She was going to call the police on me. On me. As if I were some intruder in her life. But I wasn't angry yet. I was still stunned. Still spinning. Still trying to piece together how the little girl who used to draw me hearts with "Mommy is my hero" had grown into someone who saw me as a burden, as a threat. And still, all I could think was, I was so stupid. I gave her everything. Now I had nothing, except the quiet. And even that didn't feel like peace. It started slow, subtle. I didn't go far that night. Just 2 blocks down to Meredith's house. The kind of friend you wave to but never expect to save you. She didn't ask questions when I knocked, just opened the door and said, "You can stay as long as you need." The first time I noticed something off was when Rachel began double-checking every grocery receipt I brought home. I'd been buying the same brand of oatmeal for 20 years, but suddenly she called it too expensive. When I made stew with beef instead of chicken, she said, "Maybe we should start budgeting better, Mom." But it wasn't about the oatmeal or the beef, it was about control. Soon after, she took my debit card to help consolidate bills. She said it was more convenient, less confusion for the bank. I'd always been careful with my money, never missed a payment, never overdrew. But I didn't argue. I told myself it was temporary. That same week, I noticed she started locking the office where she kept the house documents, the same office where my own financial files used to be stacked. I asked her once, gently, "Could I just get in there to grab my tax papers?" She smiled, thin, tight. "Oh, I already filed for you. No worries." That's when it clicked. I didn't even remember handing her my tax forms. After that, it all unraveled. She took over my mail, said it was just easier to collect it all in one place. But things stopped showing up. A letter from my pension fund. A statement from the investment account I'd opened with Clifford. Gone. I tried to call the bank myself, but the voice on the other end asked for information I couldn't provide anymore. Apparently, some of the account details had changed. Changed without my knowledge. And then one day, I overheard something that made my stomach drop. It was late. Rachel thought I'd gone to bed. I was just heading to the kitchen for a glass of water when I heard her voice from the living room. "No, she doesn't know," she was whispering into her phone. "I moved it all. It's under my name now, just until we're settled. And honestly, it's better this way. She's too fragile to handle money anymore." She laughed lightly. My hands went cold. Too fragile? I'd worked 30 years as a nurse. I'd balanced medical charts, budgets, patients, and emergencies. I had raised her alone when her father walked out. But now I was too fragile. I stood there in the hallway for what felt like hours, the water glass shaking in my hand. She didn't even see me as a person anymore. She saw me as a problem to manage. After that, the house felt smaller. My room wasn't cozy. It was a container. I wasn't family. I was staff. I cooked. I cleaned. I watched the kids every afternoon until sunset. Rachel started calling me the help as a joke when friends came by, and my phone, my own phone, started acting strange. Calls wouldn't go through. Texts disappeared. One morning, it was just gone. She said the kids must have misplaced it. I found it later, at the bottom of the trash bin. That's when I knew. This wasn't confusion. It wasn't just stress. This was planned. She had wanted me here. Not for love, not for support. She wanted my money. And now that she had it, she didn't need me anymore. But here's the thing. They always underestimate quiet women. They think if we don't yell, we won't fight. They think if we wait, we're weak. They think if we love them enough, we'll never bite back. They're wrong. I didn't say a word, I just began to watch. Because if she thought I was done, she had no idea who raised her. A week passed when one night my phone rang. Rachel. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to hear her out. I did. "You need to come back," she said, suddenly soft. "I didn't mean that. The boys are crying. Just, please come back. Let's talk." I stood on the sidewalk, the fog curling around my ankles like a warning. I should have said no. But love, real or fake, still has gravity. I walked back. Not for her. For the boys. I told myself I'd stay for one more night. That I'd find a plan. She didn't know then that returning would be the beginning of the end, for her. It was a Tuesday when I found the old folder. Rachel had taken the kids to a birthday party, and I had 3 rare hours alone in the house. I wasn't looking for anything. Not really. Just tidying the linen closet, trying to keep busy. But behind the stack of pillowcases was a battered file box with my name on the side in faded marker. I knew it instantly. Clifford's handwriting. Inside were copies of our joint accounts, life insurance summaries, my original retirement plan, all the paperwork I thought I had lost in the move. Somehow, it had ended up shoved behind spare linens like forgotten junk. I sat on the floor, the beige carpet rough against my knees, and flipped through page after page. Numbers, dates, balances, all of it. Including the original joint account we had added Rachel to, back when she was just starting her career, back when we thought we were helping. But what chilled me wasn't the old information. It was the new one I didn't see. Several pages were missing, the ones from the last 6 months. And that's when it hit me. Rachel hadn't just used my funds. She'd rerouted them. She had moved the money. Hidden it. I needed help. But not from a lawyer. Not yet. I needed someone who knew how Rachel's mind worked. Someone who understood how slick she could be, with numbers, accounts, and documents, when she wanted something. That's when I thought of Dan. My late son-in-law, Rachel's ex-husband. We were never particularly close, but I remembered one conversation after the divorce. He told me, "You raised a strong woman, Nora." But strong doesn't mean honest. I had brushed it off at the time, chalked it up to bitterness. But now I wasn't so sure he'd been wrong. I still had Dan's number saved in an old paper address book. I hadn't called it in years, but when I picked up the phone and dialed, he answered after the second ring. "Nora?" he said, surprised. "Is everything all right?" "No," I said quietly, "but I think you might be the only one who can help me." He didn't hesitate. Dan came by that weekend while Rachel was out with the kids again. We met at a diner across town, far enough that nobody would recognize us. I brought the folder, showed him the gaps, the missing months, The red flags. Dan went quiet. Then he nodded. I always suspected she'd try something like this. He leaned in closer. Listen, I still get monthly statements from the old tax prep system she used while we were married. She never changed the login. If she shifted your assets anywhere, I can find traces. My hands trembled as I sipped my coffee. I don't want a war, I whispered. I just want my life back. He gave me a sad smile. You don't need to fight, Nora. You just need the truth. And once you have that, you get to decide what comes next. We shook hands. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I went home, tucked the folder into a sealed bag, and slid it behind the back panel of my closet. Rachel wouldn't find it. Not this time. Because I wasn't her broken little mother anymore. I was a woman with evidence. And soon, a plan. I just needed to stay quiet long enough for it to work. I was in the kitchen when the call came in. Rachel was upstairs yelling at the boys to get their shoes on, late as always for some new appointment that seemed to matter more than anything else in this house. I stepped out the back door and answered with a whisper. What is it? I accessed her financial history through the shared tax software. You are right. She's been siphoning off your retirement funds. I leaned against the siding, my knees unsteady. How much? Close to 60,000. Maybe more, depending on the timing. My throat tightened. That was more than half of everything I had left. Dan continued. It gets worse. She moved it into a joint account. Her and some guy named Alec. I cross-checked the name. He's her boyfriend. Boyfriend? I blinked. She said they were just friends from work. She might have said a lot of things, Dan said. But according to the transaction records, they've been preparing to put a down payment on a condo. One you're not listed on. My mind went numb. I stared into the backyard, the overgrown grass, the rusted swing set I helped build with Clifford for Rachel's 3rd birthday. Everything blurred. She wasn't just taking my money. She was building a life without me in it. With my funds. Does she know you found this? I asked. No. I used my old credentials. She's careless when she thinks she's winning. I closed my eyes. It wasn't just betrayal. It was deceit with a smile. The same smile she used when she poured my tea. When she thanked me for doing the laundry. When she hugged me on my birthday. It had all been a performance. She never wanted me here for love. She wanted me here because I was convenient. Because I made her life easier. Because I had what she didn't, security. And she took it. All while calling me fragile. I had to force myself to keep breathing. Dan, I said quietly, I need you to keep this between us. No warnings, no confrontations. If Rachel gets even a whiff of what I'm doing, she'll spin it. She always spins it. I understand, he replied. What's your next move? I hesitated. I'm not sure yet, but I know who she really is now. That's a start. We ended the call, and I went back inside. Rachel was still upstairs, yelling at the boys to find their socks. Her voice felt so distant now. Hollow. That night, while everyone was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the old teacup Clifford used to drink from every morning. I remembered what he used to say. You don't need to shout to make your point. Just be steady. Be exact. So that's what I would be. Steady. Exact. The next morning, I made an appointment with the local bank. I told Rachel I had a doctor's appointment and left before she could ask questions. At the bank, I met with a young man named Simon who helped me retrieve statements from the past 6 months. I had to verify my identity with more paperwork than I ever thought necessary, but eventually I had them. All the withdrawals, all the transfers, all the proof. And my name? Removed from the main joint account, without my signature. That was illegal. I thanked Simon, slid the papers into my purse, and walked out of that bank with my spine a little straighter. Rachel thought she'd buried me under her paperwork. But now I had a trail, and I was ready to follow it. I didn't sleep the night I got the documents. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Rachel's face the moment she told me to stop worrying so much about money. The way she laughed, soft and condescending, when I said I still wanted to track my expenses. It's all one family pot now, Mom. Relax. No, it wasn't. It was theft, and I'd let it happen. The next morning, I went to see my doctor for a regular checkup. blood pressure, vitamin levels, the usual. She asked how I was adjusting to living with Rachel. I lied and said, "Fine." She nodded but didn't believe me. "Your stress markers are high again," she said. "Are you sure you're okay?" And maybe it was the exhaustion, or the way she looked at me. Not like I was an old lady wasting her time, but like I mattered. So I broke, quietly. With trembling lips and dry eyes, I told her what had happened. Not all of it. Not the betrayal. Not the heartbreak. But the money. The control. The missing phone. The banking changes. Her eyes widened slowly, and she sat down beside me. "Nora," she said, "this is financial abuse. You need to talk to someone." "I don't want to cause trouble," I whispered. "You're not. You're protecting yourself. There's a difference." That afternoon, I called the number she gave me, the Financial Abuse Recovery and Support Hotline. I almost hung up 3 times before someone answered. "Thank you for calling FARS. This is Mina speaking. How can I help you?" Her voice was gentle, not in that fake customer service way. It was the voice of someone who had seen women like me walk through fire and still doubt themselves. I told her everything. From the morning Rachel invited me in, to the day she threatened to call the police. When I got to the part about the account being changed without my signature, Mina's tone sharpened, not unkind but fierce. "That's illegal," she said. "We can help you document everything. Do you have physical proof?" "I do now," I said. "Good. Then let's start there." She told me they could assign me an advocate, someone who would help me organize my evidence, guide me through what options I had, whether legal, financial, or even protective if it came to that. "I'm not trying to punish her," I said. "I just want my independence back." "That's not punishment," she replied. "That's safety." By the end of the call, I had an appointment with a woman named Janine, mid-50s, former estate planner, now working with FARS full-time. Mina said she was one of their best, sharp, discreet, and not afraid to ruffle feathers. Exactly what I needed. I hung up and sat at the kitchen table again. Same spot. Same cup of tea. Only this time, I wasn't scared. I wasn't defeated. I had a plan, and I had someone in my corner. I tucked the phone number into the back of my journal, right next to the page where I'd written the day Rachel asked for my money. The same day I stopped being her mother and started being her mark. Rachel still thought I was too soft to fight back. Let her. Let her keep thinking that while I built the case quietly, piece by piece, document by document, because when the truth came crashing down, it wouldn't be with a scream. It would be with a signature. After the advocate was assigned, I knew I couldn't risk being cut off again. If Rachel controlled the phone, she controlled the war. So I got a new one, and I kept it secret. I told Rachel I was going for a walk. It wasn't unusual. I often did, just to get out of the house and breathe air that didn't carry the weight of her judgment. She barely looked up from her laptop, sipping a turmeric smoothie and clicking through home decor sites. Outside, I walked straight to the pharmacy at the end of the block. I asked the young man behind the counter if they sold burner phones. He blinked. "Like prepaid?" I nodded. He handed me a simple flip phone and loaded it with 2 months of minutes. No app store. No tracking. No Wi-Fi. Just call, text, power, and silence. Perfect. Back home, I hid the phone in the only place I knew she'd never look, inside Clifford's old toolbox in the garage, behind the rusted pliers, under the false bottom he built himself. Rachel hated that box, said it smelled like dust and regret. Exactly. The next day, while she was at work, I pulled it out and called Janine, my advocate. Her voice was brisk, efficient, and, to my surprise, kind. "I reviewed the file Mina started," she said. "You've got a classic case of elder financial exploitation compounded by emotional coercion. You ready to move forward?" I hesitated. "I'm scared." "Good," she said. "Means you know what this is. And you're not sleepwalking anymore." She walked me through everything. How to keep documenting Rachel's behavior, how to photograph records, save emails, track bank logins. She even taught me how to record conversations discreetly using the flip phone's voice memo feature. And then she said something that made my stomach twist. Based on what you've told me, Nora, it's time to consider protective options, especially if you suspect retaliation once she finds out you're digging. She'll say I'm losing my mind, I whispered. They always do, Janine said, which is why we build a timeline. Truth leaves footprints. Over the next week, I started leaving my own. I took photos of every receipt, every calendar Rachel posted, with notes like, Mom babysits, or Mom picks up kids. I made copies of my pension paperwork. I logged every conversation where she called me forgetful, senile, or a risk. And I made sure to keep the flip phone charged, ready, and out of her reach. It felt like espionage, but it was survival. One night, I caught her trying to unlock my bedroom door. Sorry, she said with a giggle when I opened it. Thought I left my charger in here. But her eyes went straight to the drawer where I kept my actual phone. Dead, cracked, useless. I let her look. Let her think she still had the upper hand. She didn't. She had no idea that I'd already met Janine in person. That Janine had helped me draft a financial affidavit and referred me to an elder law attorney. That every dollar she had quietly moved was now traceable and documented. Frozen soon. The game had shifted. Rachel still thought I was her old mother, soft, sweet, compliant. And I played the role well. I smiled, did the dishes, kept the kids entertained. I said nothing when she scolded me for being too nosy about household bills. But behind every smile was a ledger. Behind every okay was another recorded memo. And behind every quiet day was a storm she didn't see coming. I thought I was being cautious, careful, but Rachel caught wind of something, and her response wasn't subtle. She tried to erase me, legally and literally. It was the day after I met with the elder law attorney that everything changed. I came home to find my bedroom rearranged, my clothes folded, but not by my hands. My drawers opened. The box where I kept my insurance papers was gone. Rachel was in the kitchen when I came in, sipping a green juice like nothing had happened. I cleaned up your room a bit, she said, smiling wide. It was getting cluttered. My mouth went dry. Did you take my documents? She blinked. What documents? My legal papers. Oh, she said too quickly. You mean those old files from Dad's toolbox? I threw them out. You don't need them anymore. They were outdated. I stared at her, heart thudding. She smiled like she was doing me a favor. That night, she disconnected the internet to reset the router. The next morning, my hearing aids were gone from the charger. That afternoon, my phone was missing. She wasn't guessing anymore, she knew. And that's when the accusations began. You've been wandering off too much, Mom. Talking to strangers. Acting confused. Are you sleeping okay? Maybe we should schedule a cognitive test. Just in case. She started whispering on the phone late at night. I could hear her from the hallway. She's acting strange, forgetful, paranoid. I don't know what to do. I think she might hurt herself. Or the kids. I realized she wasn't just trying to discredit me. She was laying groundwork. I told Janine everything in a trembling voicemail left from a borrowed phone at the pharmacy. She called me back within 10 minutes. She's building a case to declare you incompetent, she said. Trying to take guardianship. That gives her full legal control over you and your finances. We need to move. Now. Janine called the elder law attorney on my behalf. Within hours, they filed an emergency petition to freeze the accounts Rachel had tampered with and initiate a protective review. My advocate called Adult Protective Services to start a record of emotional coercion and suspected financial abuse. But we weren't done. Dan got involved again. This time, he brought receipts. Literally. Old emails where Rachel discussed how to get full control of my assets. Voicemails where she mocked me for not understanding how power of attorney works. It was all evidence. Enough to halt her in her tracks. But Rachel didn't know any of that yet. That evening, she burst into my room holding a letter. You went behind my back, she snapped. You called Dan? You called some advocate? Are you trying to ruin this family? I looked at her calmly. You already did that. You're delusional, she hissed. You're unstable. And if you don't stop this, I'll have no choice but to take legal steps. I stood. Not quickly, not dramatically, but with full, steady spine. Do it, I said. Please, I'd love to see a judge read what I've collected. What you've signed. What you've stolen. She froze. Her mouth opened, then closed. She didn't speak again, just stared at me like she didn't recognize who I was anymore. Because she didn't. I wasn't her mother in an apron with soft hands and easy yeses. I was a woman with evidence. I was a woman with backup. And I was done playing house. That night, I slept with a copy of my emergency petition folded beneath my pillow. Let her try me now. Her name was Meredith. Lived 2 houses down. We'd waved in passing, exchanged pleasantries at the mailbox. She had a gentle face and a garden that always seemed to bloom even when mine died. I never imagined I'd show up on her porch with trembling hands and a heart ready to give out. But I did. Hi, I said. This is a little odd, I know, but may I use your phone? She didn't ask why. She didn't need to. She just opened the door wider. Of course, I called Janine first. Gave her the new address. Then Dan. Then, finally, the elder law attorney. All 3 said the same thing. Good. Stay out of that house. Let us handle the next part. Meredith didn't ask questions until after I hung up. Then she brought me a mug of tea and sat beside me on the floral love seat in her sunroom. Is it your daughter? She asked gently. I looked at her, tears in my eyes but no longer ashamed. Yes. And I told her. The whole story. The move-in, the mortgage, the siphoning of my accounts, the threats, the lies, the fake smiles that turned into locked drawers and gaslighting. She listened, quiet, still. But I saw her hands tighten around her mug. You're not crazy, she said, and you're not alone. That last part, I hadn't realized how badly I needed to hear it. Over the next few days, I stayed with Meredith, slept on her pull-out couch, ate toast and soup, watched the birds gather around her feeder in the mornings and remembered what peace felt like. Rachel tried calling, but I didn't answer. She tried texting, but I had no phone. She left a note at Meredith's door. I didn't read it. Because by then, Janine had submitted everything. Affidavits, documentation, voice memos, even a timeline of psychological manipulation. The elder law attorney filed for financial protection and emergency review. The bank froze the accounts in question. APS conducted an initial wellness check on my behalf. And Dan? Dan sent me a photo. Rachel's face when she was served. She looked stunned. Not angry, not vengeful. Unprepared. She'd spent so long treating me like I was slow, like I didn't know what was happening, like I was someone to handle, not someone to respect. But now the truth had a voice outside the house, one she couldn't unplug. I returned home briefly to collect my things. Meredith came with me, arms crossed, expression firm. Rachel opened the door, pretending to smile. Mom, this is ridiculous. You're blowing things out of proportion. I walked past her in silence. Took only what was mine, my clothes, my journals, a framed photo of Clifford and me on our 25th anniversary. She stood in the hallway watching me, but this time, she didn't follow me into my room. She didn't speak again. She didn't look like the woman who'd kicked me out screaming. She looked like someone trying to calculate the damage, and I let her, because it wasn't my job to fix her anymore. That night, back at Meredith's, I slept for 10 hours straight. No creaking floors, no fake smiles, no fear. Just rest. I had backup now. I had distance. And I had every intention of seeing this through. Once I was out of the house and under legal protection, everything Rachel had built on top of my silence began to crack. The first hit came with a single word: frozen. Janine called me early, 7:42 a.m., the same hour I used to make oatmeal for the boys while Rachel scrolled through her phone. It's done, she said. I didn't know what she meant right away. All accounts connected to your name or your funds are frozen under protective review, She can't touch a penny, not even with a co-signer. I sat there on Meredith's couch, staring at the tea in my lap, hands still trembling even in safety. "She'll know by now," I whispered. "She does," Janine replied. "And she's gone quiet." That was the first silence that comforted me in months. The advocate had coordinated everything with the bank's elder fraud unit. The bank manager personally reviewed my original signature files and compared them to the documents Rachel had submitted, ones with updates I never authorized. When they found discrepancies, they flagged it for internal investigation. Rachel was notified by courier that her access was suspended pending a legal review. Her boyfriend, Alec, the one she was buying the condo with, he vanished the same day. Probably once he realized the money wasn't hers to give. Poetic. Janine warned me not to expect an apology. People like Rachel, they don't crumble, they recalculate. That silence you're hearing now? That's not guilt, that's strategy. But for the first time, I wasn't scared of what she'd do next, because now I had the power. While she scrambled to untangle the web she'd spun, I filed a motion through my attorney for full financial independence, citing coercion, deception, and deliberate interference with legal documents. We had everything: timelines, bank records, voice memos, her attempt to declare me senile. Rachel didn't respond to the motion, didn't contest it, didn't show up in court. That told me everything I needed to know. She didn't think I had the strength to take this far. She never planned for me to fight. She thought I'd go away quietly. Instead, I walked into that courthouse with my spine straight and my story documented in a 3-ring binder. Every lie, every locked drawer, every unauthorized withdrawal. The judge didn't take long. He granted emergency protective status over my remaining assets. I was given exclusive control over all existing accounts. Rachel was officially barred from managing, withdrawing, or directing any funds on my behalf. They even served a no-contact financial order, preventing her from accessing my information through third parties. It was the legal version of "stay out of my life." After the ruling, Janine met me on the courthouse steps. "You did it," she said softly. "No," I replied. "We did it." But inside, something deeper stirred. It wasn't victory I felt. It was clarity. Rachel had built her control on my guilt, my generosity, and my grief. She had twisted my trust into silence and wrapped it in the ribbon of family loyalty. But I had finally cut the cord, not out of anger, out of self-respect. That night, Meredith and I shared a small dinner: grilled cheese, tomato soup, and a glass of cheap red wine. And for the first time in a long time, I ate without looking over my shoulder. Rachel could no longer touch me, or my money, or my life. Winning in court wasn't the end. It was the beginning. That day, I walked into the bank with a folder in one hand and my name in the other, and I took back what was mine. The branch manager was waiting for me when I arrived. A woman named Olivia, sharp suit, sharper eyes. But when she saw the court order in my hand, her face softened. "Mrs. Ellison," she said, standing to greet me, "we're ready when you are." I sat across from her, the morning light catching on the gold band I still wore from Clifford. I hadn't taken it off. Not because I was clinging to the past, but because it reminded me of who I used to be before I let someone else's daughter turn me into a shadow. "I'd like to transfer full control of my accounts back into my name," I said, "and I want all joint holders removed. Permanently." Olivia nodded. "We've reviewed the documents. Everything is in order. We'll make that happen today." She brought out forms, stacks of them, and I signed with a hand that didn't tremble. Not once. Every line I filled out felt like an exhale. Every signature a quiet scream. "You don't own me anymore." I reclaimed my checking, my retirement savings, the small mutual fund Clifford set up before he passed. I even opened a brand new account in my name only, where the frozen funds would be transferred once the investigation concluded. Then came the best part. Olivia opened her desk drawer and pulled out Rachel's signature form, the one she'd used to gain access to my accounts last spring. "Would you like a copy?" she asked. I looked at the elegant, slanted letters on the page. Rachel always had perfect handwriting. Even when she was stealing from me, it looked beautiful. "No," I said. I'd like you to shred it. She slid the paper into the crosscut shredder beside her desk. I watched it disappear strip by strip, line by line, until her name was dust. I stood up. It felt strange, walking out of that bank, like I was leaving behind a version of myself that had been asleep for too long. A woman who thought giving meant being quiet, who believed love meant sacrifice without limit. That woman was gone. When I got back to Meredith's, there was an envelope waiting for me. No return address, just my name written in Rachel's handwriting. I opened it slowly, expecting venom. But it wasn't that. It was worse. It was pleading. "Mom," it began. I didn't mean for things to get this far. I was just scared. Alec pressured me. The mortgage was getting too big. I didn't know what else to do. "Please don't cut me off forever. I'm your daughter." I sat on the couch, letter in my lap, and realized something. She still didn't get it. It wasn't the theft that broke me. It was the choice. She didn't come to me as a daughter who needed help. She came as a thief who needed cover. And when she realized I wouldn't stay quiet, she tried to bury me in lies. That's not fear. That's calculation. I didn't respond. Because I wasn't writing from a place of hurt anymore. I was living from a place of clarity. I didn't need an apology. I needed distance. And now I had it. The bank account was mine again. My records were secure. My voice was back in my throat, strong and ready. And next, I had children to think about. Because Rachel wasn't the only one in that house who needed protection. It was James who cried the most. Only 5, and already afraid of making noise. I used to find him curled up in the corner of the playroom, headphones on, clutching a tattered bear I had stitched together 3 times. Rachel said he was just sensitive, but I knew better. Children don't go silent unless silence is safer. One night, before I left Rachel's house for good, he whispered to me as I tucked him in, "Can you stay with me till morning?" I did. I stayed until he fell asleep, clutching my hand like a lifeline. Now, from Meredith's guest bed, I couldn't sleep without wondering what he was hearing from the hallway. What words she used when no one was watching. What tears dried before morning. I told Janine. She listened without interrupting. Then she asked, "Are you willing to report it?" I hesitated. Because even after everything, some old part of me still flinched at the idea of turning in my daughter. Still hoped she'd find her way back to being kind, to being decent. But children shouldn't pay the price for our denial. So I said yes. Dan helped too. He sent over a folder he had quietly kept from his marriage. Texts from Rachel when she was overwhelmed. Emails where she threatened to smack some sense into the boys. Photos of broken toys and bruised shins she claimed came from falling in the yard. He said he never used them in court because he thought she'd change. She never did, he told me. We compiled everything. My journal entries. The documented emotional neglect. Her erratic outbursts. The accusations she threw at me that mirrored what the boys had whispered when they thought no one was listening. And then we called Child Protective Services. Not to punish her, but to protect them. The caseworker arrived 2 days later. I wasn't there, but I got the call. Rachel had tried to charm her at first. Polished house. School folders laid neatly on the kitchen island. Lavender diffuser misting like a spa. But the boys didn't play along. James clung to the caseworker's leg. Said he didn't like when Mommy yells and throws plates. Evan said he wanted to live where Grandma makes soup and doesn't cry. They spoke the truth in children's language. Clear. Undeniable. The investigation opened that afternoon. Dan stepped in formally and offered his home for temporary placement. He lived just 1 town over, in a quiet neighborhood with a dog and a sunroom. But the boys asked for me. And for once, the system listened. My attorney filed for temporary custody, citing financial abuse of an elder and endangerment by emotional neglect. The court moved faster than I expected. By the end of the week, I was granted interim guardianship. Rachel didn't show, didn't contest, didn't even send a lawyer. I picked the boys up the next day with Meredith beside me. I expected tears or confusion. Instead, James ran into my arms, shouting, "Grandma!" Evan didn't speak. Just took my hand. Back at Meredith's, we set up a cozy corner for them. Blankets, books, puzzles. The fridge was full of applesauce and juice boxes. They smiled for the first time in days. And that night, for the first time in my life, I put 2 children to bed, not because I had to, but because I had chosen to protect them. They were safe, for now. But safety needs more than bedtime hugs and juice boxes. It needs paperwork, signatures, and the nerve to say, I'll be the one to do this right. The first night they stayed with me, I slept sitting up. Not out of fear, not out of worry, but because every time I heard one of them stir or sigh in their sleep, something inside me relaxed, like I'd finally closed a door I should have shut years ago. But kindness isn't custody, and safety isn't legal until a judge says it is. The next morning, I sat down with my attorney, Mr. Reynolds, a calm, gray-haired man who used the word dignity like a shield. He reviewed the emergency order, his pen tapping lightly against the margin. "You have standing," he said, "given the financial abuse, the current neglect claims, and Rachel's silence. We can move for permanent guardianship." I swallowed. "I'm not trying to take her children. You're protecting them," he said simply. "You're doing what she won't." The process wasn't fast, but it moved faster than it would have if I'd waited. With Janine's backing, Dan's documented history, and a caseworker who had heard James's whispers and seen Evan's bruised silence firsthand, we had more than enough to proceed. Rachel didn't fight it. I thought she might, but then I remembered what Janine said. They don't crumble, they recalculate. Rachel didn't show up at the hearing, not once. No calls, no letters, no surprise appearances, just silence. And silence, in court, is consent by default. It still broke my heart in a quiet, unbearable way. Not because I wanted her to win, but because she didn't even try to keep them. That was the real betrayal. The judge granted full legal guardianship within 3 weeks. I left that courthouse holding 2 copies of the paperwork, one for school, one for the pediatrician. I was back in the world of permission slips, allergy forms, and tiny shoelaces. Only this time, I wasn't just filling in the emergency contact box. I was writing, guardian, grandmother, responsible party. When I told the boys that they'd be staying with me longer, James asked if he could bring his bear to school now. Evan just nodded and whispered, "Do we still have story time?" "Yes," I said, pulling them both close. Every night. We found a small rental house. Nothing big. 2 bedrooms, a little backyard, and a kitchen that smelled like warm wood when the sun came in through the windows. Meredith helped us move in, bringing over extra towels and baked macaroni like we'd been family for decades. Dan visited often, not to see me, but to see his sons. And the boys lit up when he came. It wasn't perfect. Too much had happened between him and Rachel. But it was solid, honest, gentle. That's all kids need. Not the illusion of family, but the truth of care. Each day, I rebuilt routines. Breakfast at 7, homework before dinner, bedtime books, always 2, never 1. And each night, I sat in the quiet afterward and let the grief wash over me. Not for what I had now, but for what I had lost to get here. My daughter. My illusions, my years. But I had gained something too. Clarity, purpose, peace. The paperwork was signed. The house was warm. The boys were healing. And Rachel? Rachel was quiet. Still watching, probably. Still calculating. But now I had more than documents. I had roots again. I thought it was over. I thought the silence meant she had finally let go. But predators don't go quiet unless they're circling. And then one morning, the sheriff knocked on my door. It was a Thursday. The boys were at school. I had just finished folding the laundry and was steeping tea when I heard the knock. 3 sharp, measured hits that didn't sound like a neighbor or the mailman. I opened the door and saw the badge first. "Mrs. Nora Ellison?" the deputy asked. My stomach dropped. "Yes. Is something wrong?" He handed me a sealed envelope. You've been named in a civil complaint. You're not under investigation, but you need to read this." I nodded, my hands suddenly too cold for June. He tipped his hat and walked away without another word. I closed the door, sat at the kitchen table, unsealed the letter with a paring knife, like I was cutting into something poisonous. Inside, a formal complaint from Rachel, petition to regain custody, allegations of alienation, claims that I manipulated her children against her. I laughed, quiet, bitter, not because it was funny, but because I should have known. She hadn't changed. She'd waited, watched, let the dust settle and the system forget. And then, like always, she tried to rewrite the story. In her version, I was the manipulator, the thief, the bitter old woman who turned her sons against their loving mother. What she didn't count on. I was no longer the woman who backed down. I called my attorney. He was already ahead of it. She filed it in the wrong jurisdiction. The judge assigned to your guardianship case is the same one reviewing this claim. Will it go anywhere? I asked. No, but we still have to respond. With strength. Janine reached out that night. This is what abusers do when they lose control. They accuse, they spin, but don't let the noise make you question the truth. And I didn't. Because I had the records, the court orders, the evaluations, the boys' statements, the school counselor's notes. Most importantly, I had time on my side. Rachel hadn't seen them in nearly 2 months. No calls, no gifts, no apologies, not even a birthday card. The hearing was scheduled 2 weeks later. I didn't tell the boys. No need to drag them into another courtroom. They were starting to laugh again. Evan had joined the soccer team. James was learning to ride a bike. I would protect their peace like a fortress. At the hearing, Rachel showed up. She wore a pale blouse and makeup 2 shades too bright. She looked rehearsed. Her voice trembled at all the right moments. She called herself remorseful, said she'd sought therapy, claimed she was ready to repair the damage. The judge didn't even ask her a question. He read the file, then looked at her and said, "This court finds no evidence that returning custody would serve the children's best interest. Case dismissed." Just like that. Rachel didn't cry, didn't rage. She just stood, adjusted her sleeve, and walked out. I watched her go, and for the first time, I didn't feel fear. I felt nothing, not hatred, not love, just space, distance, and peace in knowing the cycle had broken. At home that evening, James asked if I could push him on the swing. I said yes. Evan helped set the table. We played Uno after dinner. Meredith stopped by with muffins. The house was calm, full, safe. Let Rachel knock again if she wants. I won't open the door. 2 weeks after the custody case was dismissed, I got the letter. The return address wasn't hers, but I knew that handwriting anywhere. Rachel still knew how to twist guilt into script. It arrived on a Wednesday, folded neatly. No postage, just slipped into the mailbox like it belonged there. Meredith handed it to me with a raised brow. "I didn't see anyone," she said, "but I've got a camera on the porch now, just so you know." I nodded, heart heavy. Inside, the note was brief. "Mom, I'm sorry. I wasn't well. I miss the boys. I miss you. Can we talk? Please. Can I come back?" "No," I lied. "No, I stole. No, I tried to erase you. Just I miss you." As if this had all been some kind of long, unfortunate misunderstanding. I stared at the letter long after the tea beside me went cold. For a moment, I thought about the Rachel I used to know, the teenager who brought me wildflowers, the young woman who called me crying after her first breakup, the mother who asked me to hold her son's hand during his first fever. But that woman hadn't shown up in years. The woman who did show up tried to take everything from me, my money, my dignity, my name, my grandchildren. And when she lost, she waited. And now she wanted back in. Not with action, not with proof of change, not with accountability. Just words, like always. I didn't respond. Not at first. I didn't even tell Janine or my lawyer. I let the letter sit on my nightstand for 3 days, while I watched Evan bring home an A on his spelling quiz, and James proudly ride his bike without training wheels. They were thriving. They were stable. They didn't ask about her, they didn't avoid her name, but they didn't carry it like a wound either. They were healing, because I had not let her back in. And I wasn't about to start now. When I did respond, I didn't write it by hand. I typed it, printed it, and sealed it tight. Rachel, the children are safe and well. I am not interested in reopening a relationship under these circumstances. Please direct any further communication through my legal representative, Nora. No anger, no apology, just a boundary she couldn't manipulate. I drove it to her apartment myself, slipped it under her door, just like she had mine, and walked away. I didn't look back, didn't wait for her shadow in the hallway, didn't wonder how she'd take it, because she'd taken enough. That night, I sat on the porch while the boys played tag in the yard. Meredith joined me, passing over a lemonade. "Was it hard?" she asked. I nodded. "But necessary. You think she'll try again?" "Maybe," I said. "But I won't be standing in the same place next time." Because I'd finally learned something Rachel never did. Love without respect is not love, it's leverage. And I don't offer myself as leverage anymore. I offer myself as a home, a protector, a provider, and yes, even now, a mother. But only to those who know the difference between family and ownership. It didn't happen all at once. Healing never does. It crept in the way morning light does. Quiet, unnoticed, until you realize the dark is gone. There was no big moment, no dramatic breakdown, no celebration. Just peace, little pieces of it. A warm mug of tea that didn't get cold from being forgotten. A quiet house filled with laughter that wasn't forced. A full night's sleep without waking up afraid of someone jiggling the doorknob. That's what healing looked like. Evan started leaving drawings for me on the fridge. Stick figure versions of us at the park, at the zoo, on a spaceship. James stopped flinching when the phone rang. They fought like siblings should, over Legos and who got to feed the cat, not over survival or fear. I found myself singing while I cooked. And one morning, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror and smiled at her. Not because everything was fixed, but because I recognized her. She looked strong. Mr. Reynolds called to tell me the final court review had closed. "You're no longer a temporary guardian," he said. "You're just family again, in the eyes of the law." I thanked him. Then I hung up and cried. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because I was grounded. Meredith hosted a small dinner to celebrate. Just her, Dan, the boys, and me. She made roast chicken. Dan brought sparkling cider. Evan toasted with a plastic cup and said, "To Grandma, the boss of everything." We laughed until our ribs hurt. Later that night, while washing dishes, Dan leaned over and said, "You saved them." I didn't answer right away, just wiped the same plate twice. "No," I said eventually. "I just stopped waiting to be chosen." Because that's what it had been, all along. All those years, I tiptoed around Rachel, trying to be useful, helpful, wanted. I thought if I gave enough, she'd love me back the way I loved her. But love without respect is a debt that never stops collecting. And now, finally, I'd paid it off. With silence, with strength, with boundaries. One evening, weeks later, James asked about his mother. We were sitting on the porch, him wrapped in a blanket, his tiny fingers playing with the edge. "Do you think she misses us?" he asked. I didn't lie. But I didn't wound him either. I think she misses what she thought life would be. But people who love you the right way, they don't leave you to guess it. He nodded, thoughtful in that way only children can be. And then he said, "I'm glad we're here." So was I. I didn't write Rachel again. She didn't write me. Her name became something we didn't whisper like a threat, but acknowledged like weather. A storm we'd come through, not forgotten, but survived. The house filled up, little by little. Not with things, with moments. Chalk drawings on the driveway, burnt pancakes on Sunday mornings, Lego towers that collapsed and were rebuilt without tantrums. I started going to a support group for grandparents, raising grandchildren. The first time, I barely spoke. The second time, I cried. By the third, I was offering tissues to someone else. Because healing isn't the absence of pain, it's the presence of perspective. It's the ability to look back at what tried to break you and say, you only miss me now that I said no. Being alone was never the threat. Being used was. And quiet doesn't mean weak. It means ready. I tucked the court documents into a fireproof box. I deleted Rachel's contact from my phone. And when James asked if he could call me Mom, Grandma, because I did both jobs, I just hugged him tight and whispered, "You can call me anything you want." Because I was done surviving. I was finally living.